Hello, welcome. We're starting just a little bit early, so we have a few minutes before the actual exhibition talk will start. So go grab something, a cup of coffee, or whatever, a beverage of your choice. Sit back, enjoy your quarantine, and enjoy these works of art. Like I said, it'll be a few minutes before we actually start, but I just want to welcome everybody and just kind of get things ready to go. So like I said, if you'll just bear with us for a few minutes, we'll start as soon as, probably in about 5 minutes. And I think I'll let you guys enjoy the paintings right behind me while you wait, because you'll see enough of me pretty soon. So you want me to make it a little bit moderator? Okay, thanks for joining us today, everyone. Before we get started talking about all the different portraits in the exhibition, I would like to thank quite a few different people and institutions for actually making this happen. So first and foremost, thank you to Creighton University, specifically the Lead Art Gallery, which is the beautiful space we're in today. Thanks to their director, Miss Jess Benjamin. Without her idea to do this show and without all of her behind the scenes help, we wouldn't be here today. So thank you very much, Jess. Thank you to the people who actually help keep the Lead Art Gallery running with all the different exhibitions and all their support, including the Keenan and the McCormick and the Shear monies. So again, because of those and some other generous donors, so due to those different people, we were able to have different exhibitions here in this space. Also, I want to thank particularly Dr. Richard Deming, because it is his endowment money that actually helped put on this specific exhibition within this space. So again, without his generosity, we wouldn't be able to be doing this for you guys today. Besides all the folks at Creighton University and the Creighton School of Medicine, I want to make sure I also throw out a thank you to all the people at the Children's Tumor Foundation. There are a great many of them working behind the scenes, whether it be promoting the event, helping with technological issues, which may happen. So we're glad that you know that that can happen in this year of 2020. And if it does, we'll try to just get back and resume as we best that we can. But again, there's many people at CTF, particularly I'm thinking, of course, of Connie Brizzen, who is responsible for this idea to actually do a kind of a joint exhibition combined with a fundraising platform. So at some point, if you're listening and watching along and you would like to donate, there's a link in this YouTube. If you just scroll down, you'll see the link to Tiltify, and you can donate there if you'd like. But besides Connie, of course, there's Julie and Dan and of course, Aiden. So there is a lovely individual named Aiden who works at CTF who helped me tremendously figure out how to even essentially log in. So if that gives you any indication, I'm completely out of my comfort zone, but that's probably a good way to start off any talk about neurofibromatosis. So like I said, we're going to just go around the gallery space here. I'm going to share some stories of the different people that I've painted. Before I do that, I also want to make sure I let people know that this is not all the portraits I have painted. So if you're watching, so some of my friends out there, if you're watching and you're wondering why your painting is not on exhibit, please do not take any of that personally. There's just only so much space in the gallery, and I want to just make sure that you know that it's really nothing like that. So every once in a while when I do shows like this, sometimes people are maybe saddened that they didn't get to see their portrait up. Just don't take any of that personally. Like I said, it's really hard to choose. And so lately I've been trying to make sure that I also include the new portraits. So a lot of these will be ones that I've done since 2020, and then maybe some portraits that haven't been shown quite as much. So that would be the only reason. So if you're watching and you're like, where's my portrait? Just know that's kind of the only reason. So if any of you watching are actually asking, well, what is neurofibromatosis? I saw the title of the exhibition. I don't really know what that means. One, you could go to the Children's Tumor Foundation, www.ctf.org, and learn everything you'd like to know about it in full breadth. Or quickly, I can just let you know it's a set of it's a genetic disorder that encompasses basically your nervous system. So NF will allow tumors to grow anywhere in or on your body. You're essentially born without neurofibroma. The rest of us have that, so our cells aren't just constantly growing. We have those cell breaks. People with neurofibromatosis do not have that. So their body really doesn't know that. So that's why their body just keeps making tumors, because they don't have that protein. They don't have that to be the cell breaks. And again, CTF has a whole bunch of interesting resources that you can go if you really want to dive into the genetics of it all. besides just tumors. So NF is much more than just tumors. If it was just tumors, I think it might be easier for us all to raise awareness, but it is not just tumors. It comes with a whole host of issues that can affect people with NF. That doesn't mean that everybody is going to have all of the different things. It's kind of like a buffet. So when you go somewhere and you go get something from the buffet, you don't get everything in the buffet, right? Like, well, I hope you don't. But you have to make choices, right? So did I mention this is an informal talk? So NF is a lot like that. So if you read about NF, you're like, oh my gosh, I just got diagnosed. You're not going to have every single manifestation of it, but you might have some. Some of the things include the cafe au lait macules. Those are kind of like those birthmarks that you might see on people, kind of tan in color. The optic gliomas, those are kind of the tumors on the eye. Low grade and high grade gliomas, which is just another way of saying brain tumors. You can have tibia dysplasia. You can have, what else? Scoliosis. You can have, there's really a whole host of things. And again, I should mention too that there are CTF moderators helping out today in the YouTube chat. So if I say anything that is either completely incorrect, I know that they will correct me, or they will expand upon what I'm saying. So like I said, there's just a whole different thing. In order to be diagnosed with NF, usually you have to have a couple of these markers. So your geneticist will assist you with that, or your pediatrician, or whoever. But usually you have to have a couple of things. So if you just have a few cafe au lait spots, that's not really going to be enough for a diagnosis. So anyway, now to talk about some paintings. I'm going to start with people I have painted from the state of Nebraska, mostly because I am from the state of Nebraska. So there you go. So for all my non-Nebraskan people, please still keep watching. This is important. The reason I am painting people from Nebraska, and this is why it's important to everybody, is because in addition to the work that the Children's Tumor Foundation does, we actually rely on our federal budget every year. And within our federal budget is the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Program, the CDMRP. And within the CDMRP, which is housed under the DoD, Department of Defense, I know that sounds unusual, but it's housed under the Department of Defense, the CDMRP. Inside that is the NF RP, so the NF research program. So the reason I'm painting Nebraskans is it's very important for me that our elected officials understand the importance of NF research. The CDMRP money is actually the money that helps fund very experimental, almost, I don't say risky, but kind of off the, thinking outside of the box type of clinical trials and those sorts of things. That's very different from the NIH grants. So sometimes our elected officials don't understand that those aren't the same types of medical research funding dollars. So sometimes they'll say, oh, we support the NIH. And it's like, oh, that's great, and you should. But the CDMRP money is different. So think of the NIH as big science, and think of the CDMRP money as these really specific sorts of things. So for me, it's kind of tricky sometimes to, chat with elected officials and, have them understand. They're all, really lovely, and they have lovely aides that I talk to. It's an election year, so I don't know if I'll be talking to the same people in February or if I'll be talking to different people. But they're all very lovely, and it'll all be great. But the first thing anyone ever asks me is, how does this impact my constituents, right? So that's usually what I get asked is, how does this impact my constituents? Why would they want to support NF research, So I started painting people in the state of Nebraska so that I could share these stories with them and say that these are your constituents. So this isn't some kind of, off the wall kind of thing. It's really, these are the people who vote for you. So having said that, I want to share some of these stories, and I'm going to kind of stand back here. When 2020 started, I wanted to drive all over our beautiful state and draw the portraits. So I know we're looking at oil paintings, but I wanted to draw the portraits of people from life. So the idea was to go and meet with different people with NF, meet them in their homes, their work, wherever they were comfortable, and be able to chat with them and find out what they wanted me to tell their elected officials. What was important to them. Is it pain management? Is it, is it how can we get something more for optic gliomas? Like what is the concern? I wanted to be able to gather information and draw from life and just have an enjoyable afternoon with them. You may recall in March, there was this thing called COVID that happened. So that was the end of Rachel writing and of meeting people in their homes. So that is why we are not looking at these drawings, rather we were looking at paintings. So instead, and I've been painting for about 10 years now, so instead I had to rely on photographs. For my artist friends out there, most of you, my painting friends and portrait painter friends and everything, most of us really enjoy drawing and painting from life, not that we don't like painting from photographs, but if you had your preference, you'd prefer probably to paint from life. But I'm hoping that even though I'm using photographic reference material, I hope that you guys will all still feel like I've done justice to each of the people portrayed in these scenes. The first person I want to talk to is my friend Tina. Tina lives pretty close to me. She lives in Gretna, which is just about 15 minutes from me. And I met her, actually I met Tina years ago. I'm probably just going to talk about Tina instead of reading this, but maybe I would do her story better if I would just stick and read with this. So in Tina's words, so I should tell you too that I ask everybody to write his or her own story. That way they're comfortable sharing what they're comfortable sharing, and I'm not maybe saying something that they wouldn't want everybody to know. So in Tina's words, Tina's NF was confirmed at age 13 when she had a fibroma removed and tested. Tina grew up with learning disabilities and speech issues. She now is a mental health therapist who is a wife and mother of 2 young adult children, one who also has NF1. Tina experiences a pain that is best described as sending bolts of electricity throughout her body. This chronic pain is constant for her, which means 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It is the kind of pain that stops her from breathing and causes migraines and severe upper back pain. The back pain is due to a plexiform neurofibroma on her spine. Unfortunately, no physician will operate on those. We can talk about those in a minute. Tina does not take narcotics, but has been begging her local university hospital to get the trial drug. That's UNMC. Calling monthly, a year later, the drug trial became a reality. Tina just started taking the magic blue pills, which is her last hope for pain relief. 8 years ago, Tina had an aneurysm and died momentarily. This was also caused due to her NF. Her near-death experience forever changed her outlook. She is happy to be alive, even with all the side effects of NF1. During the experience, God let Tina see and feel what life would be like if she went to heaven or stayed here on earth. Heaven was a euphoric feeling, which she feels guilty for leaving behind because it felt so utterly unbelievable. Staying alive meant lightning bolts of pain, deep breaths that hurt, anxiety and tears, but all of that with her family. Family memories of watching her children grow into amazing adults. Her wonderful marriage made staying alive the right choice. And so this one, like I said, I was able to go and draw Tina before COVID kind of hit us. And so when I asked her what she wanted to be doing in her painting, she loves cat shoes. So seriously, so these are her. They're like those Chuck Taylors or something. I'm like not a fashion person, but all of these shoes have like little cat designs on them. And then I thought when she said she had a collection, that meant like she had like a couple of pairs. She has more cat shoes than I even knew that, like I didn't know you could even get that. But anyway, so if anyone out there likes cat shoes, they make those. Like who knew? See, this is why everybody should paint, like the things I learned. Like, but anyway, so yeah, so she kind of set that up and we took some pictures and stuff. I'm gonna kind of slide over here to John. So right behind me here is John Schaefer. I'm friends with his folks, Andy and Amy Schaefer. I met the Schaefers probably 6 years ago at one of the Cupid Undie Run fundraisers. That's another fundraiser if anyone out there listening is interested. It's a lot of fun. All the donations go to help out with NF, so they go to the Children's Tumor Foundation. And it really is kind of what it sounds like. So you really do literally run in your underpants in February. It's really cold. But I did it. So, I mean, if I can do it, I mean, seriously, folks, you guys can do it. So that is where I met both Andy and Amy. And anyway, and then I was able to finally meet their son, John, this year. So let me tell you a little bit about his story, again, in his words. So John was born June 1997 in Lincoln, Nebraska, and is the oldest of four. He was diagnosed with NF1 when he was 5 years old, and is the first in his family to have it. At the age of 8, he experienced severe nerve pain on one side of his face. This led doctors to discover a tumor on his brainstem. His life then changed to anything but normal. John's new reality was days spent at the hospital, at doctors' offices, blood draws, MRIs, in dealing with intense nerve pain. It then progressed to several brain surgeries, years of chemotherapy, more MRIs, countless needle pokes, feeling sick, and participating in research. This tumor cannot be removed. NF has taken a lot away from John, but it has also provided some amazing experiences. He attended NF camp in Utah and met other NF heroes. He has participated in fundraising and awareness events at the Daytona International Speedway and the Lincoln Marathon. He was chosen to go on a Circle of Friends trip to Wisconsin and Florida with several NFL players and other kids who were on chemotherapy. These trips were sponsored by former Husker Grant Wistrom, Jared Tomick, and other NFL players. John went on a Make-A-Wish trip and chose to go to Legoland in California. He was active in Boy Scouts and earned the rank of Eagle Scout when he was 16. John is close to receiving a bachelor's degree in business administration and works full-time at SuperTarget. He loves listening to music, going to concerts, traveling, and spending time with his dogs and family. So when I went to draw John, again, that was pre-COVID. So when I went up to, I drew him, I hung out with the family, and I drew his portrait there. And then when it was time to decide what to be doing for his painting, I was really surprised that somebody so young was interested in albums. Made me feel nostalgic. That is not what I thought kids would be interested in these days. Should I be admitting this stuff like to the world? But I'm serious. I was like, really? I mean, albums? I mean, okay, but and he's got this awesome collection, and he takes a lot of pride in it. And you can see he's a Husker fan. He's got the Husker stuff up there. But anyway, I thought it was a lot of fun. Like I said, I didn't know everybody was into vinyl albums. Oh, our assistant in here, our student is nodding vigorously that yes, the students enjoy vinyl. So, so anyway, I just thought it was really cool. The Schaefers are a wonderful family. So if anything, it's a privilege for me to be able to paint them. All right. Moving just a little bit over here now. I'd like you guys all to meet Cindy. Cindy Lindsay McGee was born in Sidney, Nebraska, which is, for folks not familiar, that's on the western side of our state. School and home life were a constant struggle due to the fact that she was suffering from unknown epileptic seizures. Junior high and high school were different with a lot of struggles. During this time, her parents took her to several specialists, each time being told several different things, ranging from that there was absolutely nothing wrong, except that she was a little slow and a daydreamer. After school, Cindy worked as a dishwasher in a local small cafe where she married her first husband and gave birth to her first child, still not knowing that she had NF. She and her husband divorced after 18 months. However, she went on to college and she met Gus McGee, and they married and together had a son. After graduating college with honors, she took a year to take care of their son. Later, she went to work at Cabela's and stayed there for 27 years. Most of us here in Nebraska are very familiar with Cabela's, right? All the Nebraskans watching are like,
Somebody's on from the UK.
Oh, okay. So Cabela's is it's a kind of a sporting goods retail store that's very well known, especially in Sydney, or was well known in Sydney, Nebraska. At her husband's appointment, the doctor looked at the tumors in her hand and took her case history. This led to a lot of testing and her first surgery for NF. It finally answered a lot of questions as to why she had all these birthmarks and these deep tissue tumors. At this time, she was 30 years old. So keep that in mind, getting a diagnosis when you're 30 years old. After the shock wore off, she had her children tested. Her daughter was positive for NF, her son was not. Several years later, her grandson was born with many of the outward NF signs, and she fought for his testing. He was diagnosed with NF at 2 years of age. Cindy went on believing that she was a genetic mutation and the first in her family to have NF, until her maternal grandmother's death in 2017, where she met a third cousin who also had NF. And that rocked both of their worlds. So speaking of that, NF can either be inherited, so you can either get that from either your mom or dad, or it can be a spontaneous gene mutation, which means NF can happen to any family at any time. All right, let me go this way. Now I'd like for you guys to meet Emily. She also lives in Lincoln. I don't know if I mentioned that Cindy lives in Bridgeport, Nebraska now. Emily Pfeiffer was diagnosed with NF when she was 3 years old. At the age of 9, learning difficulties prompted an MRI, which revealed a brain tumor. The tumor is not responsible for her learning difficulties, but it did require surgery and radiation therapy. She did relatively well until the brain tumor returned in her early 20s. The tumor was successfully removed, but she went on to develop tumors deep within both the right and left sides of her neck. She endured multiple surgeries and life-threatening complications for many years. Her unbelievably positive attitude and resilience, despite her NF, has been a source of inspiration for her family. Emily has walked in 3 half marathons and did the Cupid's Undie Run to increase public awareness and fundraise for the Children's Tumor Foundation. Speaking of fundraising for the Children's Tumor Foundation, you also can help and do that if you'd like. Link should be listed in the chat. She currently volunteers at Tabitha Healthcare in Lincoln, Nebraska. Spending time with the elderly is a joy for her and the residents she interacts with. In April of 2016, she received an award at Tabitha's annual volunteer recognition event. The award honored her for making and keeping her commitments to her volunteer work. Emily would be the first to tell you that living with NF is very hard. Living every day to her fullest, despite the physical and cognitive challenges, continues to be her primary focus. I also want to thank people who are currently donating right now to the Tiltify campaign that's going on. So thank you, like Teresa Dobbin, for donating. Like I said, I want to make sure I am thanking people as they donate. And I'm hoping the folks at CTF will also be sure to thank you. I just want to mention that I'm really good friends with Emily's mom. And so they are so supportive of the Children's Tumor Foundation. And the mom is, she's just great, and we're good friends. So again, if there's a silver lining to NF, I think it's because I've just met incredible people. Not something that you would normally think about when your kid is diagnosed, but I have met the most incredible people throughout this journey. The last portrait of the Nebraska series here is David. This is David feeding his fish. He's very, I went down to visit him again pre-COVID, and he's got a pretty awesome tank. And besides feeding his fish and being interested in the fish, he likes to take like colorful photos of the fish and everything. So a little bit about David in his own words. David Ware was born in 1954, was born basically blind in his right eye, and had numerous surgeries throughout the years to remove tumors that were back. David is the only person in his family to have NF. Every summer trip to visit relatives came with a surgery to work on his right eye. David says, I would always be sitting in the eye doctor's chair crying my eyes out because I felt I was ugly and unlovable and wanted him to give me an artificial eye, but he never would because I had limited vision in the eye. David's dad was in the Air Force, and the family was transferred several times. In 1963, the family moved to Lincoln, Nebraska. where he started the 3rd grade. He graduated then in 1973. David received an associate degree in business in 1978. In the 80s, during an MRI, the doctors found a tumor on his left thalamus, but decided to just watch it as they did not know exactly what it was. Having problems with severe headaches, in 1998, David went to the Mayo Clinic for a biopsy and learned it was a low-grade galactic astrocytoma. And again, the team just wanted to do yearly MRIs because to attempt to remove it might be fatal or leave him severely disabled. At that time, they guessed he would have about 10 more years. Evidently, David fooled them because he's still here and kicking. Those are his words. He now suffers from chronic dizziness headaches. In 2018, he found a neuro-ophthalmologist who was willing to remove his right eye and prepared him for a prosthetic eye. He finally has his prosthetic eye, something he'd been asking for since he was a child. And there is his portrait. And since I went down to visit him in person, I think his eye looks really good, just between you and I guess everybody's watching. I thought I look great. Really, yeah, I mean, anyway, he's really happy with it. I thought it looked terrific. Okay, so we're just gonna kind of migrate to this other wall now. All right, so now, of course, you guys are looking at something completely different than paintings. So this is just a series of monoprints that I did of my friend Ashok, Sharitha. I'm going to tell you a little bit about his story, but before I talk about his story, I want to talk about this process. So this might look like it's just sort of drawings or something, but these are monoprints, so mono being one, of course, and they're fairly easy to do. So if anybody kind of likes the look of this and kind of wants to fool around with it, or a lot of people don't want to do oil painting because they just don't want to invest in a bunch of paints and mediums and canvas, and it can be really expensive really quickly. But something like this, anybody can do. So for a monoprint, all you need is a piece of plexiglass. So you probably have that like in the garage. But a piece of plexiglass, and then you seriously just paint on it and make a print, if that makes sense. So, so for these were selfies that Ashok took. So I knew that I could just look at his selfie and paint it, and I knew that when I would flip it over, it would be correct. Because the selfies are always backwards. So I knew that I could just look at his selfie, and then I used Etcher's ink because Etcher's ink, for my printmaking friends out there, they already know this, but Etcher's ink is really hard to move. So usually you have to kind of heat it up, right? Hopefully my printmakers are out there agreeing. But kind of have to heat up that ink, to get it to move. But I didn't want to heat it up. So I sort of liked that I had to sort of push and pull this ink around and sort of make these marks. And so I think I liked that look. So again, I feel like this is a process that anybody can do if you have a piece of plexiglass. And if you're like, I don't have Etcher's ink, I don't know what you're talking about, Rachel, but you can use whatever. If you want to use acrylic paint, if you want to use oil paint, whatever floats your boat. But monoprinting is a lot of fun, and you kind of get that direct result. So anyway, that's kind of the process. Now, as far as the actual story, Ashok, Sharitha, is a man from Nepal who suffers from MF. And I first sort of encountered him or met him through Facebook. So thank you, Facebook and social media. I know a lot of people are kind of grumpy about social media, but for me, it's really opened the world. I've met so many, like I said, amazing families and people with NF and people across the world with NF. And so in 2016, I saw a video that Ashok had made while he was in Nepal, kind of a fundraising video, asking for people to help him get his medical visa to be able to get to the United States and get the surgery that they needed, or that he needed, excuse me. And so there's a woman in the UK, her name is Christina Allen. So this woman in the UK set up the fundraiser to help him get that money for the medical visa. Once they did that, he was able to come to Chicago. And so in the very, like I think it was December 31st or something of 2017, he finally got to Chicago. So like I said, so through the generosity of the people in the United Kingdom and Christine Allen's efforts with her GoFundMe page, he's actually been able to get over here to the United States. The problem is once he got here, he didn't have a place to stay, he didn't know anybody, and he was moving from hostel to hostel with no way to pay for this surgery. And hostels, I learned, will only let you stay for, I think, 7 days or so, somewhere in there. So you can't just stay indefinitely at a hostel. And so seeing that and sort of hearing his plight, I decided that I needed to help him in some capacity. And so I'm lucky to have a good friend, Mary. And so I was chatting with her, and we were talking about maybe we should do a GoFundMe page. I am not technical or savvy in any of these ways, and I was just chatting with her, and by the next day she already actually created the GoFundMe page. So thank you, Mary, for doing that. And then when she did, people, I shared a story, and people started donating to help pay for these surgeries. So as you guys can imagine, since he's from Nepal, he doesn't have insurance. So some people just ask why he didn't use his insurance, but there is no insurance if you don't, if you're not a U.S. citizen and stuff. So he had to pay cash. When the surgery started, we were told it'd be $25,000. So that seemed like it was doable. But I think anybody living with NF and anybody watching today should have known what I learned too late is that it's never the cost that they actually tell you. So it was double. So while we got close to $25,000, and I was really excited about that, then we realized between the hospital's charges and then the what we have to pay the doctor, and he took a very reduced rate. But all this anesthesia, like all of this stuff, it ended up being much closer to about $50,000 or so, somewhere in there, give or take some thousands. But anyway, like I said, so we did all this GoFundMe. So I'm just gonna kind of let the camera pan by some of these, so you can kind of see some of the transition there. So this was after we were able to pay for it. What we did is we didn't really have enough money, but we gave the doctor the money that we had fundraised, and then we essentially asked the doctor if we could have it back. Isn't that funny? Not really, but really, we asked, can you actually give the hospital the money, and then can we pay you back? And you got to thank the doctors out there that will do things like that. So we gave them a nice smile and an IOU, and then so they still did the surgery. So this was what it should look like after that first surgery with all the bandages and so forth. And then after the healing, because of course it does take a while for all that to heal. This of course is what he looked like after that first surgery. So the first surgery, they were able to get about 80% of that tumor removed. Keep in mind, he had a plexiform tumor that was just crushing his skull and the eye socket, and just severely disfiguring. So just even this was just such a remarkable difference. When he did this, I should mention too, that we were lucky enough to have Ashok come visit us here in Omaha in January of 2018. That's when my friend Mary started that GoFundMe page. Before he had the surgeries. And then he came back after in May of 2018, and he came back to Creighton. So I'm gonna chat about Creighton for just a little minute here. But all of our faculty, students, staff, all of them were basically pitched in and helped fundraise for Ashok. And so when he came back, he wanted to thank everybody in person, and everybody was curious about how he was doing and how he was working out, how things were working out. And the Creighton students put on kind of an impromptu draw-a-thon event out in the hallway there, the Lead Education Center of the Arts. So we had all of our life drawing students and our artistic anatomy students and our faculty basically come down, and community members. So we had some community artists come, but they came down there and they started drawing caricatures and doing custom artwork. And with that impromptu draw-a-thon, the Creighton family here was able to pay off his anesthesia bill from that first surgery. So just some exciting stuff there. So like I said, he has kind of a special place in his heart for Creighton and all the people here in Omaha. So again, that was after the first surgery. So then we had to do some more fundraising for the second surgery because there's just still more tumors and more issues. We honestly got very, very lucky because Ashok befriended a kind of an angel in Chicago, and we weren't really able to quickly get the money that we needed. And this particular woman, who I will allow her to remain anonymous, went to the hospital and actually gave the hospital, I believe, $20,000 in cash to help pay off surgery number 2. That is incredible. There are people out there that are just so generous, and it just sort of warms my heart and probably gives all of us hope for things like this. But anyway, so that was after the second surgery. So this is kind of where we're at. So this is the healing. Then after that second surgery, where hopefully you can kind of see that, he's got more, you can kind of tell the eye structure up here. The mouth is looking more symmetrical. So everything is pretty good. Then we did more fundraising, as you can imagine, to keep going, more surgery. Because keep in mind, he still needed to get the prosthetic eye, and he didn't have that quite yet. So anyways, it's more fundraising. Here he is after that third surgery again, bandaged up. And then here he is currently with his prosthetic eye. And I can tell you, my friend Regina and I went to visit him last Labor Day, so 2019, when we could still drive and visit and do things. And when we visited him, he said with this new prosthetic eye, he said it was the first time that people looked at him, which it didn't register right away for me. I didn't know what he meant. And he said, no, he said, it's the first time people looked at me. And I thought, oh, I didn't know that people were not looking at him. So with all those tumors on his face, he had basically lived a life of people averting his gaze, and just avoiding and shunning and not wanting anything to do with him. And he loves Nepal and he loves, the people of Nepal, but many of them are cruel. So even though he's got a master's in accounting, he's a very smart man, nobody will hire him. And I guess in Nepal, you can just tell somebody that they feel your face is frightening. So that's what they told him. They're like, we're not hiring you because your face scares away customers. So I don't think we can do anything like that here in the States. I think that would be like against the law to tell somebody your face is scary, I'm not hiring you. But evidently in Nepal, they can do that. So as you can imagine, he really just wanted to be self-sufficient and, like I said, smart. He just wanted to get the surgery and get the identity, get the person he really is, not the tumors. Like he doesn't want to just be a big plexiform tumor. So I'm going to transition over to the actual oil paintings and talk about those for a little bit. But I also want to talk about this plexiform tumor stuff. So if I didn't really explain that before, there's a couple different types of tumors. I mean, there's a lot of different types of tumors that people have. Sometimes they have the cutaneous ones, they look like little small things on their, right under their skin and stuff. But these plexiform tumors are the big ones that are sort of disfiguring. So I'm going to transition and just kind of show you what it looks like on the painting, so you can maybe get a better sense of what I mean. And the plexiforms. So you can see this first painting I did of Ashok in 2016. I did this off of his video still. So this was when I told you earlier that he'd done a kind of a video to try and fundraise to get that medical visa money. All I did was stop the video, and then I painted. I just looked at my computer and painted a video still. So I don't actually recommend that to any of my artist friends out there. Don't do the painting from the video still, but because it's hard to see. But anyway, so here we are. So I tried it. But anyway, these plexiforms. So these plexiform tumors, they're just sort of these big cluster and bundle of nerves and stuff. That here's the problem. So normally you would say like, well, yeah, they'll just go get surgery and cut them off and we're good to go. But they don't really work that way. So often what happens is a surgeon might go in there And suddenly, you know, you don't know what's tumor and you don't know what's tissue, and you really don't want to just start kind of chopping away at stuff that's not tumor, if that makes sense. So I can tell you this is now, here's where CTF comes in. So you might be asking, well, now what? Well, I'll tell you what. So the Children's Tumor Foundation has been working really hard with this complex problem. So how do we help people with plexiform, you know, tumors? Like, what are we supposed to do with that? Especially when, like I said, surgery can be pretty risky and stuff. So they've been doing clinical trials for, gosh, probably over 5 years now, working on this. And they actually came up with a MEK inhibitor. MEK, again, is kind of your pathway, your signaling thing, right? So remember I said earlier that if you have neurofibromatosis, you know, then that would be stopping that pathway, right? Like stop sign, like don't come here. But people with NF don't have that, so they need something to inhibit that pathway. MEK is one of them. So something to inhibit that. Well, they worked on this thing to do a MEK inhibitor, and did many different trials, and there are different ones. But as of February 2020, I believe, the FDA finally approved a MEK inhibitor for people with NF. So people now, the first time ever, this is the first FDA-approved drug for people with NF who have plexiform tumors, the selumetinib. It's amazing. So if you're wondering, I guess what I'm trying to say is if you're wondering, like, I don't know if I should donate, like, what's the big deal? What are they even doing? Well, that's what they're doing. So that gives everyone living, whether you live in Nepal or you live in Bridgeport, Nebraska, that gives you hope. I mean, the fact that you can actually take a medication now to shrink that tumor, that's incredible. You know, when I found out that Henry had NF, there was like nothing. It was like, sorry, sister, you know, wish we could help you. And now, this, with the Children's Tumor Foundation, gives me hope. I know it gives everybody living with NF hope. I mean, to just add on that, my son has a plexiform tumor growing on his back now. Well, I can honestly tell you I'm not quite as worried about that, because I know that CTF is behind the scenes working on this, and I know that if it becomes a problem, he will probably be able to be put on that drug. So I hope I explained it succinctly. I hope my friends at CTF are sort of filling in the gaps with whatever I'm, you know, if I'm not being succinct enough. But you know, and really anyone watching with NF, anyone around the world, if you have NF, you should go onto the CTF website and be part of their NF registry. I mean, what's the point of watching this and not realizing that there's something out there for you? You know, you could be part of this, and you could be, you know, there could be treatments, there could be something actually to help you with your pain or help you with your tumors. So please, if nothing else, please reach out to the folks at the Children's Tumor Foundation. If nothing else, to get into their registry link. You'll be glad you did. Anyway, that's a little segue there. Oh, look, I'm even wearing a shirt. See, I know a fighter, CTF. Anyway, that's just me singing the praises of CTF. But like I said, I think it's important to actually talk about what they are doing. I don't know, sometimes like when we all donate to charities, I mean, sometimes I'm kind of like, I don't really, you know, like I assume that they're doing good work, but I don't actually know what they do. I don't know if anyone else feels that way. But I just feel like if you do donate to CTF, they are doing. They are on a mission. Their hashtag is NF, but they are on a mission to actually figure this puzzle out. NF is on chromosome 17, and in case you're wondering how this all works, think of it as think of the chromosome as being almost like nicked, like a mutation. Now that would be fine if the mutation was the same for everybody. But the truth is, depending on how chromosome 17 mutates, that is what's going to determine how your NF is going to affect you. So then you might be asking, well, why don't they just figure out and do some DNA sequencing, right? Do some gene sequencing. Why don't they figure out how the gene mutates? So that way when somebody is diagnosed with NF, they can say, oh, hey, I looked at your DNA, I did some sequencing, and I see that you will have NF in this way, this way, and this way, and your NF will affect you this way, this way, this way. So I asked that as a parent. My doctor is Dr. Gutman over in Wash University's NF clinic, and I said, I think it'd be real nice, Dr. Gutman, if you could like figure that out, so then that way I would know like how this will affect Henry. Apparently that was a real knee slapper, because the whole lab busted out laughing. That's exactly what they're trying to do. So they are trying to figure out exactly how NF mutates, And then what does that mean for the patient? The last time I asked him, I said, well, how many ways can chromosome 17 mutate? Like, are we talking like 10, 15? Over 3,000 is what he said. And they're not done counting. So that should give you some ideas. The other thing also, speaking of Dr. Goodall, he also has been a recipient of grant money through the Children's Tumor Foundation. So again, when you donate to places like this, you're actually helping all of our NF researchers. But anyway, back to my friend Ashok. Like I said, this was the painting I did in 2016, before he even came to the US. Next painting is after that first surgery, when he came back in May. Like I said, he was very grateful to our Creighton family, of course, and all the donors. So not, my friends, pretty much Omaha, Nebraska. Thank you. If you've ever met me, like my friends, like I'm serious. I mean, I had friends like on Facebook. It's like, oh my gosh, we were junior high together. I mean, thank you. They donated. People I don't know, they donated. It was just crazy. Thank you. By the way, speaking of thank you, Michelle Richardson and Anita. Well, thanks, Anita, for donating. Anita's son also has NF. That family is amazing. We could do a whole thing about the Gribben family and still have time to spare. They're amazing. So thank you. But yeah, so this picture is of Ashok after that first surgery, visiting Creighton here. He's wearing his traditional Nepali kind of attire because he dressed up. So he dressed up when he came back on campus. If any of you have met Ashok in person, you know he carries that camera and he takes millions of pictures. Oh my gosh. Not only does he take millions of pictures, he posts them all on Facebook. So it doesn't matter if that's the most unflattering picture of you ever, it's on Facebook. I know because I'm like, oh my gosh, Ashok. It's like, we really don't need to upload those horrible pictures of me. But yeah, so when he came to Omaha in January, I took him to the Henry Gordon Zoo. I took him to Lars and Gardens. At that time, the Sciathagons exhibit was on display, so I took him to see that. I took him to the Jocelyn Art Museum. I took him, oh my gosh, where else? Every place. Okay. And then when he came back in May 2018, I'll show you some drawings in a minute here, but I did some drawings of him. He was falling asleep. That's just how it is. So if you're an artist and you're drawing and painting people, they totally fall asleep on you because it's so boring to just sit there while somebody's, So that's also why, like, you probably won't see me doing a painting event because I know that you guys would just totally, nod off. But anyway, I took him to the Himalayan Java here in town. So I took him there to eat, and it's actually Nepali food. So we went and did that, and again, all the people at Himalayan Java embraced him and called him brother, and they're all friends now. And now they have a new restaurant in Chicago. Again, this is where Ashok is living now. He's in Chicago. That's where the surgeon is. Dr. McKinnon is in Chicago. But they have this new thing called Kathmandu Momo. If you guys like momos, I do. But if you like momos and you're in Chicago, any Chicago viewers out there? Kathmandu Momo. So they went out there, and it's like, well, Ashok is already there, and they already know him from when we went to Himalayan Java in 2018, and so they were able to hire him. Like, that's incredible. It just blows my mind how amazing and generous and how the world works. But yes, so he is working now. So again, if anyone's out in Chicago, please go visit Kathmandu Momo. Go say you want to speak to Ashok. I'm serious. I'm hoping to get to Chicago when we can travel and do things again. I would like to go back to Chicago and go visit him at his work and get some momos. So, but anyway, this is, like I said, this was just when he came to visit us here at Creighton. Then I'm just gonna move down a little bit. So like I said, I'm hoping as you guys kind of look at these paintings progress, I'm hoping that you're kind of seeing some of the change, of course, in his facial. So this was after the second surgery. So you can actually kind of see where the eye socket is, kind of forming. And this has been kind of taking care of some of the under the mouth and that kind of stuff. And really, this really is him playing Jenga. So hence Ashok playing Jenga is the title. What's interesting here is we have some friends in Naperville, Michael and Stephanie Forbes. Both of them have NF. So even that's kind of interesting. So here you have a couple, both the man and woman have NF, and found companionship and love, because they obviously don't need to explain their disorder to their partner. But what was nice is they invited Ashok over for the holidays. So just even the warmth and community and love and stuff that's happening within the NF community, I think is really amazing. So anyway, so this really was him, I think on New Year's Eve or something, playing Jenga. So I went ahead and painted that one. And then after his third surgery, I mentioned earlier that my friend Regina and I went and drove to Chicago, like I said, about a year ago or so. And what's interesting is, like, I told her, I said, I need to take a bunch of pictures of Ashok for his next painting number 4, surgery number 3, painting number 4. So I said, let's go to, he wanted to take us to his temple. And so, so we went to the Hindu temple that's near Naperville. And I took I think I took 70 photos of Ashok posing and sort of a traditional sort of namaste in front of his sacred temple. And I thought I want to do something really, honoring him and his culture. So I took all these photos. They're fine. But then, after we're done with all the formal stuff, then he's like, we should, he wants to go and check out just downtown Chicago and hang out. And so Regina and I and Ashok go to downtown Chicago and hang out, and he wants to show us the Bean. And so we're just messing around. And again, Ashok, is taking all these pictures and stuff. And I took this picture, again, like one picture. This was never, I was just taking pictures to have some fun. And then later that night, I was in the hotel, showing all the pictures to my friend Regina. And, she's looking through, and I'm like, here's all the real, professional, traditional portraiture looking pictures. And we get to this picture, and I'm like, oh, I love this picture of Ashok. I'm like, he's smiling, we had so much fun. And then Regina finally said, she goes, Rachel, she's like, that's the painting. And I'm like, that is the painting. So so there you go. So yet again, if you can work from better photographs, my art friends out there, I recommend it. But at the same time, I've been able to do a lot of paintings from really, I don't want to say kind of photos, but you can, well, I'm the one that took the photo. I'm making fun of my own photo, so again, our art students out there, how everybody thinks they need to have the best of this, or they need to have the best oil paints, they need the best this, and and if I had like an awesome studio, I'd be a great artist. And it's like, oh, come on. So you can create art wherever, your apartment, whatever, your bad photos that you took. See, I did. So that's my encouraging art talk to all art students out there. Come on, quit telling me about your bad photos. So you can still make it work. But anyway, like I said, I just really loved this picture of him, and I thought that would be kind of a much more fun way to sort of solidify this transition in his life. We are still fundraising for him for his next surgery, so that'd be surgery number 4. And honestly, Ashok, you can just find him on Facebook if you're interested in that. It's pretty easy to find him or connect with me and stuff. If you want to hear more about his personal journey and all this, seriously, just drop me a line and I'll get you connected. Ashok's really fun. He's outgoing. I just love him. Actually, I think I inherited a brother somewhere along the lines here, but I just love Ashok. So, like I said, if anyone out there watching, wants to learn more, just contact me or contact Ashok. Like I said, just type in his name, and you'll be like, aha, it's him. So, anyway, I'm going to sort of transition here over to this next painting. All right. So with this painting, we kind of have this one kind of set aside by itself here. I want to talk a little bit about this, some of the background story of this before I actually talk about the person. But I mentioned earlier in my talk that I was very lucky to have, of course, have this exhibition. But as you can imagine, everything's expensive, the brochures, the, posters, just mailing, just all the things that go into an exhibition. So again, Dr. Richard Deming, he's a gentleman who, his endowment, again, paid for all this. So the reason I want to talk about Dr. Deming is because I was lucky enough to be able to have a chat with him this summer. Speaking of lucky, I was also lucky enough to be asked to be the Richard Deming Endowed Chair of Medical Humanities here at Creighton and the Creighton School of Medicine. So I want to talk a little bit about Dr. Deming, if I can. So Dr. Deming, who practices in Des Moines, Iowa, he's their director of the Mercy Cancer Center, I believe. Anyway, he is an oncologist. He graduated from Creighton School of Medicine, and he attributes his kind of philosophy about patient care to the humanities. He feels that the humanities are what really shaped him to be the compassionate, caring physician that he truly is. The reason I'm bringing him up so much is, besides his generosity to Creighton and this endowment and everything, is because when I talked to him this summer to kind of introduce myself, since I'd be kind of this steward of his funds, and we just started talking. And so he said, you know NF, like I said, he's an oncologist, but he goes, well, neurofibromatosis, more than I do. And he said, I've just had a few patients who have had it over the years, but of course you would know more. And I said, I told him, I have to think that we know the same person. And I said, you wouldn't happen to remember somebody named Kathy Wenahan, would you? And then the phone just went silent for a really long time. And then he said, you know Kathy? And I said, well, yeah. I said, I know Kathy. I said, I can tell you what she told me. I met Kathy Wenahan at a Children's Tumor Foundation family symposium event in 2016 in Austin, Texas. And then when the event was over, we're in the terminal, of course, waiting to go home. Nebraska and Iowa folks stick together. So we hang out in terminals together. So anyway, so we were, we're just chatting. And I said, do you want to have your, portrait painted? And, I said, but here's the catch. I said, I want you doing something interesting. I said, I don't want to be like Kathy checking Facebook. I said, I want it to be something interesting or just out of the ordinary. I said, something that you think would make for a really good painting. And her eyes lit up. And she goes, I got something for you. And I thought, well, I don't know. I thought, I'll wait till I get the photos, and I'll see if I can read this. And then she opens up her phone and she starts showing me these photos. And I said, okay. I said, this is actually cool. I said, what is this? And she goes, I went to Nepal. She goes, I basically, with my cancer group, got to go climb to the base camp of Mount Everest. And I said, what? I said, I bet that was expensive. And she goes, no. I mean, I'm like, who does that? And then she goes, no. She goes, my doctor took me. And I said, what? She goes, yes, my oncologist. So he has a nonprofit. Dr. Deming has started a nonprofit called Above and Beyond, but he takes his cancer patients as part of their healing. Part of the treatment is being in the present and living in the moment. So he takes his patients to Mount Everest. So it's not just chemotherapy and, whatever. I mean, he really thinks about this person in a whole sense. I mean, that trip completely, just changed her outlook. Like I said, just her talking about it, she lit up. And then at the time I said, okay. I said, well, send me some photos. And then you guys know how life works. I came home, I got busy, I didn't think about it. And then I think maybe a year passed or something, and I did send her another note. I said, hey, what happened to those photos? Oh, yeah. So she's going to send me the photos. And then again, I think you guys know how this works, but you just forget. And then I would say, like I said, I think I just, like I said, time went on, I just kind of forgot or whatever. But I found out, that Kathy passed away. So with her cancer and stuff, she did pass away. So I never did the painting. And what was interesting is, so I'm telling Dr. Deming this on the phone, and I said, well, I never did the painting. even though I told her I would do it. And I said, but I don't have any pictures of her from that trip. And I said, and he goes, well, I have pictures. And I said, and I said, well, I said, do you have like good pictures? I said, like, I can't have like Kathy like way off on the distance, you know, and like, and he goes, oh, and I said, well, how many do you have? I said, for real. And he goes, oh, like 1,000. So I feel like this portrait turned out really well because Dr. Deming had like a really good photos for me to use. So anyway, like I said, and even though he didn't have to, he also donated to the Children's Tumor Foundation. So I feel like Dr. Deming's done enough, but he also donated because that was Kathy's NF charity that she worked with and cared about. But anyway, for me, this was just kind of a really important painting because it was something that I told her I was going to do, and then I never did it. I did not realize that she had passed away from cancer. So it's kind of nice, I guess, as an artist to be able to actually fulfill your promise to somebody, even if it's after they've passed on. So I'm just going to actually let you guys kind of just look at Kathy's portrait for a few minutes. I'm going to take a little bit of a break, drink a little water. But in this time, I hope that you'll stay in the chat. Please ask all of our CTF moderators any questions about anything, and then about either painting or about NF, and then like in about 2 or 3 minutes, I'll be back and we will head into the other room. Thanks, I'll be right back. Okay. Thank you for giving me a little break there to drink some water. Hopefully you guys are ready to tune in for the next kind of installment. Before I talk too much, if you're joining us just now, you didn't get to come listen to any of the previous stuff, I do want to make sure I thank everyone again. So I want to thank specifically Creighton University, Creighton School of Medicine, Creighton Lead Art Gallery for hosting this, Jess Benjamin, the Lead Art Gallery director. It was her idea to have my work in here and have this show. So without Jess, we wouldn't be doing any of this today. I want to thank my friends at the Children's Tumor Foundation, specifically Connie and Dan and Aiden and Julie. You'll see those names in the chat if you want to know, if you want to contact them if you have questions. They have helped us with this behind the scenes. And it was actually Connie's idea to do this art exhibition, this live talk, specifically because October is an anti-bully awareness month, to try and discuss about bullying and raise awareness as part of the anti-bully campaign. So my talk is actually one of several talks and events that CTF will be sponsoring today. I believe that they're going to do another live stream event after tonight, so you might want to check with the CTF folks so you can check out what else is going on. I also, again, want to thank Dr. Richard Deming and his endowment for, again, putting on this exhibition. The Lead Art Gallery, just in general, is helped paid for by the McCormick funds and the Shear funds and the Keenan funds and other anonymous donors. So I want to first thank all of the people who helped behind the scenes put all of this on. Before I talk again too much about this, I said this earlier, it's really difficult to have an art exhibition. I have about 86, I think, oil paintings now. And I have hundreds of watercolors that I've done. And so I'm sure you guys just know logistically that I cannot possibly display all of the paintings in the space provided. So if we go along and you don't see your loved one or you don't see your painting or anything like that, please don't take any of that personally. Especially when I talk about these next ones that are on display. These are all people who have passed away due to their NF complications. This is a kind of a very tough subject. And so, of course, the last thing I would want anybody to do is feel badly that I did not include their portrait of their loved one. So please do not, please don't take that personally if you don't see the portrait of your loved one on display in this exhibition. We just had just a few walls, and I tried to include a lot of the more recent paintings. So some of the other portraits I've been lucky enough to display over the years in other venues. And so some of these are more recent, like paintings that I've done this year and so forth. So I just kind of want to put that disclaimer out, because every once in a while I'll do an exhibition, and I sometimes inadvertently hurt someone's feelings because I didn't include their portrait. So I just don't want anyone to feel like it's intentional or anything like that. So I'm going to start with this wall. So on this wall are people who have had NF1, and because of their NF1, they passed away due to some complications. And so I'm going to share their stories with you. This is Cecil. I'll kind of back up a little bit here. Cecil Hernandez Fiasco is from the Philippines, was born with a lot of cafe-lace spots on her skin. As a child, she was very active and loved playing and running around. Sometimes she experienced severe headaches that made her stop what she loved to do. When Cecil was 13 years old, she noticed lumps starting to grow on her skin. As she got older, the lumps started to grow in large numbers. She doesn't have NF only on her skin, but under her skin as well. The tumors under her skin got bigger and started pressing some nerves, which makes living with NF painful. Doctors said the tumors have to be removed. She has already had 8 operations to remove those specific tumors. Some of them turned out to be malignant and needed some radiation.
None of that stops Cecil from living a normal life and from doing the things that she wants to do. As Cecil looked for answers to what neurofibromatosis really was, she found not just an answer, but a friend whose name is Keisha. She also has NF, and together they formed a group, NF Friends Philippines, which has over 100 members, including parents of children with NF. They try to support each other by focusing on the blessings that they receive each day and help to raise awareness about the disorder. Despite the nerve damage NF has caused, Cecil loved playing badminton, and she played it almost every day. 1 month after this painting was completed, Cecil lost her leg due to NF tumors and was wheelchair bound. So I keep these bios written in the way they wrote them when they were alive. So anyway, she passed away from her complications at the beginning of 2020. And I can tell you, I love Facebook, but I love chatting with her. Her brother actually went out and took like 1 million photos of her playing badminton. So if I was making fun of myself and making fun of some of this earlier about like the bad photos, her brother, I had every single movement of badminton that I could pick from for this, for this painting that I thought, but I'm like, I'm not sure a big racket in front of her face is a good idea. So that is why I chose this. And she really did have this sort of thoughtful, pensive stare that I thought was pretty cool. So she loved the painting, and she just loved that I captured it. I had no idea. I painted this in July of 2017 and completed it then, and I had no idea that in the next month that she would have to have her leg amputated. So she loved the painting, and it just always made her happy, and it reminded her of kind of better times and stuff. So anyway, that's Cecil. And like I said, that what's nice is that NF Friends Philippines, if anybody from the Philippines is watching it, that's a really active group. And I can't stress the value of sort of these support groups. So wherever you're living, see if you can find some people with NF just kind of around your community. So you have somebody who actually understands what you're going through and that kind of stuff, and you can bounce ideas off of and stuff. But the NF Philippines, like I'm in their Facebook page too, even though I've actually never been to the Philippines. But I'm part of the group. I think I'm an honorary member just because I painted and I painted Kate Cat's portrait as well. But anyway, I'm all about the different support groups and stuff. So, all right, we're going to move over here. I have to think a lot of you in our NF community probably recognize Jerry. So let me share. And again, these are written by the individuals, again, when they were alive. In October 1983, Gary Willman met a doctor who told him his life would consist of going home and waiting to die. All of the information then was associated with Joseph Merrick, Elephant Man. Since he was unable to join the Navy, he was sentenced to die. He instead chose to return to school and work toward a degree. Jerry obtained his associate's MBA in technical theater from Rogers State College. He worked for a short time at Discovery Land in Oklahoma, doing the play, Oklahoma. Trying his hand at counter sales, he moved to Texas. He later worked managing and doing maintenance for a small hotel. Choosing to take some time off from the motel, he traveled on a 2-man construction crew across 7 states for about a year. Jerry later returned to Oklahoma, where he is now living and taking care of the house he grew up in. Around the house, he tinkered with small projects using wood and other materials. NF has inspired Jerry to do many things. In Jerry's words, I'm always advocating and informing, he put the N and F in capital letters, he's informing, play on words. I'm always informing people about neurofibromatosis. I did my first NF walk in 2010 and have continued to do so ever since. I have also began running the Cupid's Undie Run in multiple states. Jerry was the top fundraiser for the Cupid's Undie Run in 2017. Sadly, Jerry passed away suddenly and unexpectedly later that year. His legacy will live on through all who knew him. I can tell you that I actually met Jerry, maybe it's been 10 years, but I met him maybe longer. But I met him back when MySpace was a thing. If you guys remember MySpace, some of you probably too young, but some of the people at my age probably remember that. But when I was on MySpace,
his name on there was Knotty, Knotty, so Knotty, the naughty man or something like that, but he was emphasizing the Knott, the knots. And then we connected and I realized that he had the same disorder that my son had. So really back then, I didn't know anybody who had NF. And so here on MySpace, I find somebody who has it. And so I was able to talk to him using that platform and just ask him questions, what was life, living with it and that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, I started Jerry's painting, but you'll see the completion date for Jerry's painting is 2018. So I started his painting, he liked it, he loved what I had started, he only got to see the underpainting. So he never actually got to see his finished painting because he passed away before I was done with it. So that's always been kind of tough. But anyway, I am guessing, I am hoping that he would have liked it. So anyway, and I even included he was proud of his tattoos. I don't know if you guys can see that. So I made sure I painted that on here as well. So for any of my Creighton family on campus, if you guys want to come check it out, you can check out the tattoo stuff. So that's Jerry. And move over here. So this is a painting that I just finished recently, a few weeks ago. This painting is called Tommy Showing the Way. So this biography was written by Tommy's mother. And so this is what she writes. Tommy was diagnosed with NF when he was just 6 months old. When Tommy hit puberty, his NF kicked into high gear, visual loss, on some spots of his skin, as well as inside his chest cavity. He also battled with his peers, noticing that he was different in speed, education, and motor function skills. He smiled it off because, quote unquote, that was the way. After high school, Tommy struggled with learning how to drive, so he walked everywhere. Around this time, one of the tumors on his lung caused a bleed that resulted in the removal of part of his lung. He then suffered the same bleed on the opposite side, but this time the result was that it stopped without having to remove that part of the lung. Despite his NF, he met the love of his life, Tiffany, and they were married and blessed with 2 children, who were fortunately born without NF. Tommy knew he could collect money from the state for his medical issues, but chose to work and provide for his family as a cart pusher, all while working to work each day. In his 30s, Tommy's NF progressed to a point where the tumors wrapped around the organ that so many loved, his heart. In an effort to slow the growth of the tumor, wrapping around his aorta, he received a drug to slow the growth. Unfortunately, the treatment was cut short as he lost his battle to NF 2 months later at the age of 32. Until the end, Tommy continued to work, be a great father to his kids, a doting husband, and a shining beacon to all that witnessed his drive and smile. Tommy's motivation to live life to the fullest is a reminder to all that know him because, in his words, that is the way. And again, I just did this painting probably in the last month or so. So I've been very fortunate to be able to be in contact with his mom. And she had some different photos that she sent to me. And I liked this one. I think I just liked that he had a t-shirt on his head. He just seemed like he was a fun, kind of outgoing, kind of a fun guy. And I hope his mother, I hope she likes what I did with the painting. And like I said, I sort of just liked that he was hiking along, and there was actually some of the lights coming through the foliage kind of ascending onto him like that. So anyway, like I said, I'm hopeful that I did justice to her son. This next one is Meg. This is her dog Miles. So again, in her words, Meg Rowe was diagnosed with NF as an infant. For the most part, she had a pretty normal childhood, other than having a large tumor on her lower back that was extremely painful when bumped and one on her foot. When she was 8, she had a major surgery to remove both tumors. Her parents had shielded her from the seriousness of the surgery and the fact that there was a chance that she would not walk again afterwards. But she didn't know that without the surgery, she would eventually be paralyzed. The following summer, though, was when things really changed for Meg. Her local newspaper ran an article about neurofibromatosis and used her family as the subject. The unfortunate title of this article was, quote unquote, living with Elephant Man's disease. For the next several years, she was teased and called names like Elephant Girl. It was really the first time she had felt different because of her MS. Meg leads a fulfilling life. She graduated from Virginia Tech with a BA in Communication Studies and minors in Theater Arts and Liberal Arts. She is very active in her church, where she volunteers in the women's ministry and missions ministry. She has been in Nicaragua 14 times since 2003 to volunteer in an orphanage. In Meg's words, quote unquote, I pray every day that we will have a cure for NF. The sooner, the better. Sadly, in 2016, Meg lost her battle due to NF-related cancer. She was in the midst of participating in the CTF Cupid's Undie Run and posthumously raised over $20,000 for the Children's Tumor Foundation. On a personal level with Meg, again, Facebook, but I met her, through Facebook. And when she would go down to Nicaragua and help out in the orphanages, she would ask me to paint portraits of the orphans living there, so she could give them, give them portraits and this kind of stuff. I always felt like I was sort of living vicariously through Meg, but she would just send me these photos, and then I would do these just kind of quick watercolors. I mean, I don't know if they were anything spectacular, but I would just do these quick watercolor portraits of the kids, and then I would mail Meg all the portraits, and then she would take the portraits to Nicaragua and then go back to the orphanage. And since she would go to the same orphanage, she'd be able to give the kids their portraits. And it was cool. It was a lot of fun. I liked it. So I also felt that it was sort of very sudden that she passed away. I didn't expect that, although I'm not sure we ever expect that. So anyway, that is Meg's story. We're going to just kind of move here and go to the next wall. So you will recognize Ashok again. And I'll just kind of stay here a little bit. So these are, when I talked about drawing Ashok from life, these are some, not all, because I draw a lot. So there's many drawings, but these are just some of the drawings. But again, these are the ones done from life. This one on the edge, there's two on the edges actually that are the ones I did when we went back to Chicago. And I did those in the hotel room. So he would just sit in the hotel room and I would just sketch him. So I like working on, so this is kind of for my artsy friends, but I enjoy working on toned, like gray tone paper. And then I like, I personally prefer charcoal over like graphite, but whatever you like using. But with the charcoal, I just kind of like being able to kind of smudge and smear and stuff like that. So again, like I said, he posed. So these are done from life. I think they only took me maybe 2 hours. So, but again, I can't stress enough that it's so hard to model for someone. I don't know if all my art friends out there, anybody listening, if your art friend asks you to model, just go ahead. Really. Do you know how hard it is to be an artist and have your friends like, can you take a picture? No, I don't want to take a picture. So anyway, if you could just model. So let me just explain it this way. You've probably all made a photocopy of a photocopy, right? And then it kind of loses something. So I mean, if I can work from life, if I have that as a choice, then I would prefer to work from life than necessarily a photo. So hopefully that makes sense to folks. I mean, we all still work from photos, but again, if I could have a choice, it's like, well, of course I'd rather see you and see you three-dimensionally. And so anyway, so Ashok is a good sport. Again, this was one of the drawings done on the Chicago trip. This middle drawing is from when he came back in May 2018, when he came back to Creighton, and we just did this portrait upstairs in the painting studio.
And he was falling asleep. So, I also learned, like, don't put classical music on. So all my art teachers out there are probably cringing. But I feel like classical music makes models and people fall asleep. I feel like it makes my students fall asleep. So I highly recommend music from the 80s. So that seems to keep you're not going to fall asleep if Bon Jovi is singing. So this is kind of like my method, and I'm sure all the artists out there have much better recommendations. But anyway, this was the middle one. This is kind of, we worked on this, and then, like I said, then we ended up going over to that Himalayan Java in downtown Omaha, meeting some of those friends there. And then again, this one on the end, so the two that are sort of flanking the middle one, again, that was done in Chicago when we went to visit last Labor Day, and again from life. And I hope, and like I said, I really love drawing from life. A lot of it is because, you're really looking at the person, and then, my friend Regina, I mentioned, was on this trip. So it was nice visiting, and I can draw. It just makes for kind of just a real kind of cohesive experience. So like I said, I really love it. And sometimes when I'm drawing, believe it or not, I'm not talking. Most people know I'm very chatty, but when I'm drawing, I'm not very chatty. And I actually want to make sure I thank Paul for donating. That's awesome. But anyway, like I said, so the whole experience of being able to draw from life and have those conversations, I think, is really important for both the artist and the sitter. This was not done from life, but this is actually, I just wanted to do something to honor Ashok. And not that I'm not honoring him with these, but those were just kind of from life and stuff. And I thought, well, I had all these different photos of him when he was in his traditional attire, and I thought, well, maybe I should do a nice charcoal drawing. And so really that is all this is a charcoal drawing on vellum. Okay, so if you're interested in that, obviously vellum is going to be translucent, and so underneath is just an ink kind of wash of different colors and stuff, and then I sketched in the skyline of Chicago. So anyway, if you come and get closer, you can kind of see these different layers of it. And like I said, I was just trying to kind of give a nod to both his Nepali heritage and his new home, which is Chicago, and kind of trying to kind of put that in there. And then of course, I mean, that's an equal sign going through there, so you guys can figure out probably what that means without me explaining. But I have many thoughts about many things, but I'll leave some of my artwork to your, to your interpretation. So I won't give it all away. But anyway, that's kind of what that's all about. I want to turn now to this next wall. All right. Before I start talking about these individuals, I want to just mention that there are 3 different types of NF. So far, I've been really talking quite a bit about NF1, but truthfully, there are 3 different types of NF, NF1, NF2, and schwannomatosis. The next series of portraits are going to be people who have NF2 and have passed away due to those NF2 complications. I'm just going to read a little bit of information from the Children's Tumor website about NF2. So NF2 is much less common than NF1. It affects 1 in 25,000 people worldwide. This disorder is characterized by the development of benign tumors called vestibular schwannomatic, and acoustic neuromas. I'll say that. Please check the chat for the correct words, and don't take it out on me that I do not pronounce things very well. But anyway, they're on the nerve that carries sound and bounce information from the inner ear to the brain on the 8th cranial nerve. These tumors affect both ears, often leading to partial or complete hearing loss. People with NF2 may also develop other types of benign brain or spinal tumors. The disorder can also cause the development of cataracts or other eye findings, potentially compromising vision. Most people develop symptoms in late teen and early adult years, although 10% of people develop symptoms late during childhood. I just wanted to make sure I clarified that. I mentioned earlier that NF1 is about 1 in $2,500, $3,000, somewhere in there. NF2 is, like I said, it's a little bit more rare, but just causes so much havoc. So the Children's Tumor Foundation is the leading research organization for both NF1, NF2, and traumatosis. But if you're an NF2 family watching right now, please reach out to them. They have all sorts of, they had a consortium earlier for just NF2 people. So if you wanted that kind of more specific NF2 research, or you feel like everything's kind of NF1, please reach out to CTF and be in contact with them. Like I said, there's all sorts of stuff they're doing for the NF2 families and individuals out there. NF2, I know, is actually on chromosome 22. So if NF1 is chromosome 17, NF2 is on chromosome 22. I'm going to start by talking about this painting. I just finished this painting, as in, don't touch the painting, it might still be wet. Don't lean up against the painting because dioxide purple never dries. So if you're at Creighton watching this right now, please do not touch this painting. So seriously, I just finished it and we just installed it. So this biography was written by Lars, his mother. So it's called Lars Responding to Messages. Lars was born with a predisposition disorder. When he was 2 years old, the family noticed that his fine motor skills showed some defects. An MRI showed something, but it was not clear and was not looked into further. Suddenly, at the age of 16, got a bump on his head that the doctor thought was a fat bump. Lars was disturbed by this bump and he was bullied with it at school. A cardiovascular surgeon removed his bump under local anesthesia and saw that it was attached to the nerves. She immediately made the link to NF, and a new MRI showed that he had one tumor in the brain stem, one on the larger, on the outside, one on and one larger, older one outside. In total, he had 19 tumors spread on the spinal cord and face. He walked into the hospital for an urgent brain operation and came out with paralyzed hands and legs. TV and Facebook were his only outlet, and even with this, he needed help. Despite all of this, he remained optimistic with an indescribable humor. On November 1st, 2014, he said goodbye with a very scared heart about what was to come. NF changed the lives of his family forever. Lars wanted to be famous for one day, and he succeeded. He was invited on a famous Belgian radio station. The radio station broadcasted to the people listening to write Lars cards while he's in the hospital. He got about 4,000 cards in the rehabilitation clinic and also at home. Lars got letters from all over the world, including the Queen and King of Belgium, as well as their army. Lars was an NF2 warrior. So that was written by his mother. His mother reached out to me probably less than a month ago or so, but she just asked, how do I go about selecting the people that I paint? And as I was thinking about it, she sent me a picture of her son, who I thought looked a lot like my son, to be honest. I thought, wow, he looks like Henry. And then it was kind of startling for me that her son had to go in for kind of a emergency brain tumor surgery with the thought that you can come out paralyzed. And my son went into brain tumor surgery with the thought that he can come out paralyzed. And her son did come out of brain tumor surgery paralyzed. My son did not come out of brain tumor surgery paralyzed. And so it just really kind of hit home for me. And so that was the criteria to get your portrait painted. I don't know about what criteria. I can tell you, I was just moved by her story, and I just told her I'm going to start painting your son's portrait right now. And that's what I did. So I stopped everything else I was doing, and I decided I'm going to paint Lars's portrait right now. And maybe, I know his dream was to be famous for one day, but then I thought, well, maybe I could actually help with his dream, and I could do his portrait. Maybe I could actually make him famous for 2 days or a little bit longer, So, and I know a portrait isn't the same thing, but there's always something we can always do to help people out. So, anyway, that was what I thought I could do to help the family. So, let me move on.
This next one is Keisha. And this is both Lars and Keisha. When I did their portraits, I did their portraits after they had passed away. So Keisha's boyfriend wrote this biography. The 25-year-old story of Keisha Petrus can be summed up in overcoming the challenges that NF2 threw her way through a multitude of surgical operations, a few radiosurgery sessions, and chemotherapy. She was first diagnosed with NF2 when she was 4 years old through an MRI, which showed tumors growing on her hearing nerves. In 1999, she had her first brain surgery in Los Angeles. While the tumor on the left side of her hearing nerve was removed successfully, she was left half deaf and half of her face was paralyzed. Since the first surgery, she had 4 spinal operations before her death in 2014. 1 in Malaysia, 2 in India, and 1 in the United States. She also had 2 radiosurgery sessions in India and underwent experimental chemotherapy at University Malaya Medical Center in Malaysia. To quote her in her own words, "My duels with NF2 have left me scarred, wheelchair-bound, and deaf." Her quest to live life to the fullest led her to pursue her dreams, including getting to swim with dolphins. Keisha used her NF2 to encourage people to realize their true potential and to come together and unite in love. As she said in her last public speech before her death, when asked to comment on her numerous surgical scars, she said, I do not see reason to consider these scars a disfigurement of my body. Rather, I choose to see them as a testament of how trials and adversity can unite the human spirit. Out of tragedy, my family, doctors, nurses, physiotherapists, caregivers, and friends have united time and again to shine forth with the ultimate good within humankind. This is the story behind each and every scar on my body, of a unity of care and love turning tragedy into triumph. I am still connected and friends with her boyfriend, who lives in Malaysia. He is a true NF2 warrior. Like I said, she passed away many years ago, and he is still fighting for NF2 and still posting and still trying to educate the people of Malaysia about NF2 and raise awareness. This next painting is Garrett. I'll just kind of read here. Garrett, well, I'm going to read again. This was written before he passed away. Garrett Bauman has NF2. NF causes benign tumors to grow on various nerves throughout the body. People with NF2 always have these tumors on both the left and right vestibular nerves, a part of the acoustic nerve. So they usually have little or no hearing. Garrett has no hearing on the right side and only 50% hearing on his left side. He also has several tumors in his brain and dozens of tumors up and down his spine. Garrett also has these tumors on his arm, neck, side, and back. Because of so many of the surgeries and continuing seizures, this cherry Slurpee was the first drink in 2 years Garrett was able to consume unassisted with the use of the tracheal tube. From that time, NF has continually and rapidly deteriorated his body. His doctors finally recommended to his family to arrange hospice care while they continued to administer more painkillers. What I can tell you is Garrett passed away. His birthday was last week. Well, it should have been his 31st birthday, was last week. And his family, the Bowmans, are very instrumental and very big supporters of the Children's Tumor Foundation and hold numerous fundraisers and awareness. And Garrett was probably one of the first people, that I sort of met with NF2, because their family was so involved and so, vocal and raising awareness. I felt like that they were kind of answered a lot of questions and really helped raise a lot of awareness about NF2. I can also tell you when I was working on this painting, I asked Garrett what it was like then to finally be able to drink, out of a cup instead of a tracheal tube. And I said, why the Slurpee? I said, I'll paint, I'll paint you drinking out of the Slurpee, but I don't know. So I said, why the Slurpee? And I'm not sure I said this publicly, but he said he wished that it would have had like a lot more vodka in it. But it was, I thought that was funny. But it's still good. So the Slurpee was still good. I do have preferred a little extra in there. Like I said, I wish I could have met him in person. He seems like he was a pretty fun kid, and so loved by everyone. So even now, people still, talk about Garrett and his legacy, and there's just a warmth, really, that surrounds the whole family. All right, I'm going to move over to Yvonne. All right, so in Yvonne's words, Yvonne Fung was born in the city of Penang, Yava, Malaysia. When Yvonne was 13 years old, her own health started declining. She lost her hearing and started falling down for no reason by 14. By 16, she could barely walk. Countless tumors were found in her brain and along her spinal cord. She was diagnosed with NF2. Yvonne had her first 2 surgeries in Malaysia immediately to try and save what was left. The doctors there could not remove the brain tumor safely, so she needed to look elsewhere. She found a doctor in Los Angeles who volunteered to remove it for her for free. Since then, Yvonne resolved to go back to him for her future surgeries, but it would not be free. Yvonne was determined to raise the funds needed for surgery on her own. She designed a t-shirt and sold it at a modest price of just RM30 a piece. I don't know Malaysian currency to know what that equivalent is in US dollars. But she needed RM 230,000 for the surgery. I know, so she sold t-shirts for RM30, but she needed 230,000 RMs for that surgery back in 2006. Initially, people ignored her, but slowly people supported and came forward to help her sell by consignment. Within 10 months, Yvonne managed to raise the funds for her surgery. She realized that she needed to help other NF patients in Malaysia get money for treatments and spent her life dedicated to doing just that. Yvonne, after many surgeries, passed away at the age of 33 due to NF-related complications. All right, now we are going to just take a small walk. We're going to go back into the main gallery there, and I'm going to end with somebody near and dear to my heart, my son. So we'll go in here. All right, so I don't actually need to read anything for this because I feel like I probably should remember the story pretty well. So I'm going to show you 2 paintings. So this is my son, Henry. Henry was diagnosed with NF when he was 4 months old. Like many of you watching, I had never heard of NF. I did really what you should not do. Back in those days, we didn't have phones, where you could just look things up. So I had to race back home, log back into the computer, and Google neurofibromatosis. That's a bad idea. The geneticists said, do not do that. So why is it we don't listen, George? Like, well, we just don't listen. I mean, you can't tell a patient or somebody that, don't Google something. I mean, but anyway. So I went home, Googled it. I just felt lost. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I didn't even know what this was supposed to mean. Because it's unpredictable, I don't know what that's supposed to mean for Henry. Like, what of these things is he supposed to get? As a ridiculous mother, I assumed he was going to get all the things. I don't know why. Nobody ever says that. But of course, for some reason, my son's going to get every single thing that you can get with NF, is what I thought. So for a long time, I just kind of chose to be in denial, which is not healthy. But I was so worried that people would feel sorry for Henry or label him that I didn't want anybody to know about his NF. Because I just didn't want pity or any special treatment. So that lasted until 2nd semester of kindergarten, and the teachers were, how do I phrase this? His kindergarten teacher asked for a special conference. And I thought, why are we doing a special conference? So we did a special conference with the principal. That's kind of unusual. And I was already complaining that there was too many crafts in kindergarten. So like my son with his NF, he's got fine motor skill issues. And I thought, if they do another craft with scissors, I'm just going to lose it. He cannot use scissors and cut. And it's like, can we move on from the crafts? But I think she knew something was up. And my diatribe about the crafts was not helping. So of course, during this conference, I went on and on about crafts. Can we talk about other things? All this. But finally, I had to just admit that he had a genetic disorder, which really the principal, the principal kind of got stern with me, and I kind of mumbled that he had a genetic disorder. But then the principal actually said, he goes, how are we supposed to help your son when you don't allow us to help your son? Because you need to tell us these things so we can get the proper resources and the proper specialists and people in there. And I said, well, I don't want Henry to be taken out, and all the kids wonder, like, what's Henry, I said, I don't want all that. But I was informed that apparently education today is not at all like education when I was going through. So kids are in and out for all sorts of various reasons and stuff. So it doesn't have that same stigma as it did when I was growing up. So Henry got some of the things that he needed, and the services that he needed. And then, like I said, over time, I really did want to try and do something to raise awareness. And, we talk about the Cupid's Undie Run that CTF does. CTF does a bunch of walks. And so some of those are things that you can do. So if you out there are saying, like, how can I help? How can I do something? They have all sorts of things that you can think about. I am not athletic. So, I don't know if you can tell. What gave it away? This. No, so I'm not going to run. I don't, and like, it's terribly frightening. Hats off to all the people who organize those walks, but organizing anything is probably not my thing. So instead I think I'll just paint. How about if I paint? I enjoy painting and I can paint. So to be honest, I started with a man whose name is Reggie Bibbs, and I painted his portrait. He has NF. And I painted his portrait, and you know how Facebook works. He posted it on his Facebook as a profile picture, and then one thing kind of led to another. And suddenly I was kind of doing these. They're watercolors, but kind of doing these portraits. And so then after a while, I decided to make a stipulation that you had to kind of donate to an NF charity of your choice. And there's several great NF charities. In addition to the Children's Tumor Foundation, there's NF Network, NF Central Plains, there's, NF Midwest. So please reach out and please find as many, be part of all of them. I love what they all do. I try and donate and help with all of them. So do reach out and look into it. But anyway, so because of that, as you guys can tell, the project just kind of started to grow, and then I decided to switch from the watercolors and start doing oil painting. So there's a reason we still do oil painting, besides the fact that we enjoy oil painting. But you might have noticed that like the president still gets his portrait done in oil. Perhaps you remember the Barack Obama portrait that was unveiled. I thought it was very lovely. I'm a fan of Pickton D. Wiley, but if you don't know what I'm talking about, the presidents still, in this day and age, get a traditional portrait done in oil. The reason is because it is a proven archival method of solidifying legacy. I'm not saying anything against photography, so I don't want the photographers to come after me after this talk. It's just that photography has only been around for less than 200 years, so it's just not quite as proven yet as an archival type of thing. But oil painting is. So we still use kind of oil painting as that way to kind of solidify. And I love photography too. So, but that is something. So then at some point I thought, well, why don't I decide whose legacy gets solidified in oil paint? And so why not have it be people within that? So I'm going to just briefly have you look at this painting. This is my son Henry at age 10, checking the weather with this. This looks like a walkie-talkie, but it's a pocket weather alert system. When he was 10, he asked us for a Doppler radar thing that the news station uses. Believe it or not, that's millions of dollars. We didn't get him that. This is $20. We got this. But anyway, Henry, like I said, when he was 10, Henry actually thought this painting would be improved if I would have put a big tornado behind him, with shingles of the house flying all over and stuff. So I don't ask him anymore about his input on my paintings. But I did think it was time to update his painting. Like I said, that was when he was 10. He's 17 years old now. So I redid his painting. Just this year, I redid it. So he is still checking the weather. So the painting is the same title. He's still checking the weather, but of course he's using his phone now. And I just want to point out that I took the pictures in January, and he is just wearing that long-sleeved t-shirt even though we all know he probably should be wearing a coat. So when it's cold, you really should wear a coat. So his poor decision-making actually is not a result of NF. What they tell me is that's called adolescence. So that is that. But he just goes to school and doesn't wear a coat, and I don't know. It's a Henry thing. I don't get that. And CTF can't help you with that either. Your kids will put on their coats. But I thought at the time, no one's gonna believe this painting of you standing out there in a long sleeve tee with a winter setting that looks so foamy. But then when I thought about it, I thought, well, no, this is Henry. So maybe when I do his painting again in 6 years, he will have enough to know to put on a coat if it's a winter scene. Who knows? Keep your fingers crossed. But again, with his NF, Henry's doing great. He's a junior at Miller West here in town. Like I said, with his NF, he has the fine motor skill issues. He's got some cognitive issues that he works around with. And then we help him. He's also got, the formation of some of those cutaneous tumors that are kind of starting to populate his torso. He's got a plexiform that's kind of growing on his back now. And he's got an almost an optic tumor, and he's got 4 brain tumors, 2 of which just hang out and don't do anything. One was growing, and it got to be the size of a plum, which I find incomprehensible that you can have a plum like in your brain, but this is NF. So we had that growing, and so last year we had to have surgery. There was no more putting it off. So he had to have brain surgery, and they literally had to sort of, because it was so deep in the thalamus, they sort of drilled all the way down into his brain to sort of burn the tumor from the inside out, but not burn too much of it because they didn't want to actually start burning important neural pathways. But they thought if they could burn the tumor, then it could start shrinking. The reason this tumor was problematic was it wasn't necessarily the tumor itself, it was just that it was pressing on these neural pathways, and then if they did not do surgery, then he'd be left paralyzed. When we did do surgery, they told us that he would probably, maybe, hopefully not, have some brain damage, and he might be blind. But we were very lucky. So after the surgery, Henry, and the surgery stay was for 10 days. We were very lucky that after 2.5 days, we were discharged from the hospital. He had no temporary brain damage, and he was not blind. None of the things that might go wrong with the surgery, none of that happened. So we were very lucky, very blessed, so very blessed, like beyond belief. And really 3 weeks later, he wasn't supposed to go back to school. He was supposed to recover for about a month, but like Henry is Henry. So I was trying to keep him at home, and then he was actually sneaking to school. Have you ever heard of anything like that? Have you ever heard of kids sneaking to school? Like really? But so he was going back to school, and so I had to call the neurosurgeon and just say, we have to change the orders. So they did. So they allowed him to go back to school as he could tolerate. But anyway, 3 weeks after his brain tumor surgery, he took his AP Human Geography test, and he dropped it, and he's going to get college credit for that. So that's really exciting that you can have brain surgery and still do okay on your AP exam, even though your mom doesn't really recommend that and would have preferred that you just healed like you were supposed to. But again, if we could go back to the teen adolescence issue. Anyway. So somebody's asked if I studied under different artists. Yeah, so just real quickly, I got my undergraduate at the University of Nebraska at Kearney, and then I went to an atelier out in Los Angeles. An atelier is just kind of a fancy term for a kind of an art school where you just really learn drawing and painting and just kind of learning the grit of stuff. But you don't get a degree when you're done. You're just kind of there to like really learn how to draw or paint, whatever it is you're interested in. And then, like I said, that was in Los Angeles, so I learned under a lot of amazing artists out there. And then I went on and got my MFA at Lesley University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I was able to study under a bunch of amazing artists there. I feel like I'm actually just a summation of so many wonderful artists and teachers that if I started listing them, I would probably not list all of them. I mean, really, really been the beneficiary of so many amazing teachers. And I mean, I can go all the way back to like my high school art teachers that were amazing. So everybody at every stage in my life has been encouraging and amazing and supportive. So, and actually at Creighton, I hope that I can be the same for my students. I hope they feel like I'm giving them everything that I can give them. So I'm passing along all the stuff my teachers taught for me. I'm hopefully giving them everything that I can. It is almost time to end, so we only have about a minute or two. So before I close, I want to again thank all the people that are making this possible: the Children's Tumor Foundation, Creighton University, Creighton School of Medicine, the Dr. Deming Endowment that paid for this, the Lead Art Gallery and all of its supporters, the Creighton University School of Medicine and Creighton Lead Art Gallery, and Creighton College of Arts and Sciences, and the benefactors that make the Lead Art Gallery what it is, which include the Keenan and the McCormick and the Shear funds, along with anonymous donors. And again, I want to thank the people at the Children's Tumor Foundation for all their help behind the scenes. If you haven't had a chance to donate and you would like to donate, all of us, all the people I just mentioned, all of us would be ever so grateful. And that Tiltify link should be there for you for a while to be able to do that. So anyway, that is all. Thank you so much for spending whatever amount of time you spent with me. I appreciate it. And for those of you who actually spent 2 hours with me, thank you. You're angels. So again, thank you so much.